Okay, so I'm with Jen and Angie, my two favorite people from the I've Had It podcast. Look, there's so much to jump into, and the hour goes by very quickly here on Mea Culpa. So I'm going to jump right into it. Other than saying you both look marvelous. More importantly, the two of you have absolutely no qualms about calling out bullshit. What current political issue, whether it's the ongoing culture wars or the debates on climate change or gun control, which political issues do you think is full of it and why?
Oh, I think the pro-life movement is the biggest shit show in the United States. And they have played a decades-long game in this messaging. And we live in a state in Oklahoma where we have a total abortion ban. And they just started selling ammo in vending machines in 7-Elevens right next to schools. But yet all the politicians here are pro-life, but they're making it easier for kids to buy ammo.
I think mine is I am furious about two things tied. I'm so fucking tired of hearing about drag queens and banning books, but nobody says a word when kids are killed in school. Like they're protecting them from drag queens, which doesn't happen, books, which they can get on their phones, but yet nothing about guns. And then my most other hated thing is talking about, well, abortion after birth. Well, they're aborting babies after birth. Like that's a lie. That's called murder. That's not happening. And then I saw Trump this weekend talking about that kids were going to school and transgender affirming care is being performed on them at school and then they come home. I'm like, that shit doesn't even happen.
You know, I talk about that on my YouTube channel. I do this whole breakdown of it. I've never in my entire life heard of anything so stupid where mom or pop or whoever ends up making you your sandwich, your peanut butter and jelly, your tuna fish, whatever it is, puts a little Doritos in the bag, maybe with a soda, if your folks allow you to even drink soda, a water, a juice, whatever. And you get onto the bus and you go there, let's say you're male or female, and then what? In between history, lunch, and gym, you end up getting transgender surgery. So now you come home wearing the same clothes, but instead of going there as John, you're coming back as Joanne, right? Or you're there as Joanne, now you're coming back as John. I mean, this thing is so stupid onto him. But the thing that I hate to say it, I'm with you, Jen, on this one. When they're talking about this nonsense. I mean, Tim Walz, as an example, went ahead and started this nonsense and he just called out Trump's nonsense onto all of this bullshit. I mean, I've never seen anything like the lies that Trump is saying on a daily basis. It's really out of control.
It's completely out of control. And his tweet that he sent out over the weekend about wanting to incarcerate donors, he went full-blown authoritarian, fascist, and his vindictive default setting is really, really coming out. And it's terrifying to think that if this man, who I think is in, probably early onset dementia, if not middle set dementia, and you would know more because you knew what he was like years ago compared to now, but the ramblings and the vindictive nature of it, I cannot believe that we have a candidate at the top of a political ticket that is talking about incarcerating his opponents and donors of his opponents.
Right. But when you brought up the point that they're selling ammunition now in vending machines at 7-Eleven. I want my listeners for a second to just think about how fucked up that actually really is. You imagine, so you're going in and now you're paying for a Slurpee and 20-45 caliber bullets. I mean, there's something really wrong with us as Americans, or I should say some of us Americans, where you think that this is even acceptable. I mean, to sell why not just put in, hey, you could buy the 45 caliber firearm from a 7-Eleven vending machine too. All you have to do is just, I don't know, use your pay app, for it. It's really sick.
It's really sick, and we live in a state where all of the politicians grandstand about their faith, and they grandstand about they're just there to protect children. Yet it is so easy for a teenager to go out and buy a gun. It's easier to go out and buy a gun in our state than it is to get a driver's license, to vote, to buy cigarettes, to buy a vape, to buy porn, or to buy a beer. It is easier for them to go buy an assault weapon. And if they run out of bullets, now they can just go to the vending machine. Yet these are all the pro-life, abstinence only, hardcore right-wing Christian nationalist government that we have in the state right now. And it just falls flat on its face when the number one cause of death for children in this country is
Yeah.
gun violence. That's the number one thing. And they do nothing about it. And J.D. Vance, number 2 at the ticket, said, it's just a fact of life. And that's what scares me so much about these people is they move the goalposts as to what's acceptable. Now they're just saying, it's just a fact of life. Our kids have to accept that they could get shot at school.
Right? You remember when we were kids, you used to have fire drills. They were always a lot of fun because it stopped you from class, right? And then you just
Right.
got a chance to bullshit and go outside or go to the gym during this. And that was like the big thing. There was always a room monitor, and everybody would then have to line up in an orderly fashion, generally by height, right? And that way you knew where you were in the class. And then somebody would open the door and everybody would march quietly, silently, following the corners of the wall until either you got outside. If it was a beautiful day or if it was inclement weather, you'd end up in the gym, and then they would shut the fire bell off and so on. Now today, it's not fire alarms. Fuck fire. We can easily deal with that. Right now, it's these firearm drills that are going on where somebody has to lock the door, and then they have to turn over the desks. They have to pile as many desks in front of the door as possible. There are hiding places that everybody has to go to. Again, it'll be, of course, behind all of the downed desks and so on. This is what the kids today have to live with. This is what this generation, have done to the next generation coming in. That you go to school, or how about as parents? You put your kid on the bus, and what do you have to do? Every day you have to pray to God that your child comes home safe and sound, that there's not going to be some form of violence taken against them. This is really the wrong way to live. And Shady Vance and Von Schitzenpants with their ongoing continuous bullshit about it, pandering to the NRA, pandering to these MAGA morons. I don't get it.
I don't get it. Here's what we talk about a lot on our one of our podcasts is you can understand a crazy person in isolation. We see it all the time. So you can understand Trump being crazy, but it's the millions of people that vote for him and support him that are now saying, no, we want all the same stuff he wants. We want an authoritarian leader. We want him to have consolidated power in the government. They want this now. And I think that Barack Obama, when he said you have a lot of people that cling to their guns and religion, and they freaked out because they are the biggest snowflakes. Oh my God, Barack Obama said that. I think he was spot on. And I think Hillary Clinton with the basket of deplorables didn't go far enough. And I think those two insights were very helpful in understanding what's going on with 40% of the country. And they are fed this steady diet where they just freebase Fox News and Newsmax and, all those sociopaths that have the right-wing podcasts. And they just get fed all of this red meat, and the anger and the rage that he stews up. We live in it. I mean, you see it here when you live in a red state and you don't have a blue government that protects you from the worst impulses on the right. And it's terrifying. You have women that they have a dead baby in their belly and the doctor needs to remove it. And they cannot do it until the woman's life is completely at risk. And then it prohibits her from ever being able to get pregnant again in the future. Yet, hey, we're so pro-life. And it really pisses me off, Michael, because none of these guys are doctors. Donald Trump, Shady Vance, the governor of our state, Kevin Stent, who we call Limp Dick Stitt. And he's always talking about I'm here to protect life. In Oklahoma, we protect life. And yet you have all of these women that can't access abortion care. But here's who it hurts the most. If Pumps's daughter were to be pregnant, she needed abortion care, we could afford to fly to Colorado, to New York, to California, because we have the money to do so. So who it hurts are the poorest members of society. They get further marginalized and further trapped in the poverty cycle because they don't have access to leave the state, to get on a plane to go get abortion care.
Yeah, but here's the problem with that. So if God forbid, Angie needed, to go and to leave the state or the country for that matter. By the way, it's almost cheaper now to go to a foreign country than it is to fly across the country here in the United States. You go, and if you go pregnant, because this is something that they're trying to do, they have apps now that will track your menstrual cycle. They want to track your pregnancy, right? I mean, it's really crazy. If you leave and you abort, even out of state or out of the country, they believe that they have the right to charge you with murder, and not just you. Let's say, Jen, that you go ahead and you help her. You book the ticket. You call the doctor. You help her in any way, shape, or form. You're an accessory to murder. That's how far that this dystopian Gilead group of idiots are really trying to go.
We have a debate going on our podcast. Is this the patriarchy wanting power or control, or is it control with power? What do you think?
Well, I think it's control with power. I mean, that's my position onto it. I mean, they believe that they know more about your reproductive decision-making rights and your decision-making process than you. And that, of course, is the ignorance and the arrogance of men, specifically red men, right? These Republican assholes that want to turn around and tell you that, this is what you need to do because the Bible says so, or because we have an obligation to protect the unborn. How about this? How about this to your Governor Limp Dick? How about worry about worry about your own fucking family? How about worry about what's relevant to you? Don't worry about everybody else. Worry about yourself. If you want to have 15, 20 kids, I tell you what I would say. God bless you. Have as many as you want. And I hope each and every one of them, as we like to say, in the Jewish tradition, they bring you nothing but nachas, right? Joy, happiness. May their lives be filled with everything that you want for them and more. But Limp Dick, stay the fuck out of my business, because I'm not interested in you or your opinion. That's my opinion onto it. I want to move on and ask you this one though, because politics today, it feels like this nonstop reality show. I mean, that's really what Trump has done. He's turned this election, and sorry about this, Kim and the rest of the Kardashians, but he's basically turned the election into like the Kardashian reality show. How do you guys manage to stay energized and maintain a balanced perspective when discussing the never-ending cycle of political scandals, investigations, outrageous statements, and so on?
Well, I'll tell you, and it's because we're on the front lines of this. We see Trumpism realized in our community. We see what happens and how much he's emboldened the worst impulses of these men on the right. And we see what they've done to abortion care. It's a total abortion ban. And you're hearing all of these horrible stories about women bleeding out in parking lots and the doctors afraid to treat them. Our universities and hospitals are unable to recruit OBGYNs anymore. They don't want to come to this state. They're fleeing this state to go practice medicine somewhere else. They are removing discrimination protections for the LGBTQ plus community. They have just mandated that they put the 10 Commandments in all public school classrooms.
Before putting them up, why don't they should read them themselves and adhere to some of the tenets of the 10 Commandments? And by the way, let me just stop you for 1 second there, Angie, because it's not just the Republican men. You also have women on the Republican side, like Marjorie Toilet Green or Lauren Hobart. I mean, in all fairness, if you wanted to turn around and they're the first ones that are out there, they're almost like self-loathing women. But if you think about it too, think about like Lauren Hobart. She's sitting there whacking off a guy at a Beetlejuice. No, serious, right? She's grinding this guy, right? Like a pro, while sitting there, and there are kids sitting in front, behind, to the side of them, right? I mean, yeah, this is exactly what the Ten Commandments is telling you to do.
Well, and so when we see that they're putting all of this, enacting all of this stuff, and you see the breathtaking hypocrisy of a lot of the people, and you see that we're, out of all 50 states, Oklahoma is ranked 50th best place for women to live, dead last. And so my message to independent voters is, when you see states that have a Republican supermajority, a Republican governor, House, Senate, and Supreme Court within a state, and they've had it for years, like they have in the South, we're ranked dead last in everything. We're ranked 49th in education. I think we're 49th in mother mortality rate, infant mortality rate. These policies don't work well for people. The South is always struggling with rankings, and they're always cutting programs that help people. The economy suffers from it. People suffer from it, but yet they're pro-life. And here's one thing I want to say about limp dick, and this is just a little side thing that Pumps and I like to talk about a lot. If it's God's will that you have that baby, then we demand that all erectile dysfunction medication be removed from the market, because we think it's God's will that your penis stay limp as well, right, Pumps?
You can't. If it's God's will, you have to have a baby. It's God's will, you can't get it up. These are the deal. These are the choices.
That's true. I mean, no, seriously, isn't that how it should go?
Yeah.
Mind you, women's health has always played second fiddle to men's health. It's amazing. You really don't need many men in order to keep civilization going. What you do need is, you need a woman, and you need her uterus. Right? I mean, let's just be very clear about that. And it's funny because a guy has an erection problem, he could have a lifetime supply of Viagra. A woman has endometriosis or adenomyosis or any other issue that affects a woman, and all of a sudden it's not even covered under health care. It's really amazing to me. I mean, breast cancer, the same thing. It's like, I mean, the BRCA gene. Let's just remove the breast, right? I mean, or hysterectomy. It's like amazing to me. Woman has there are solutions. They need to throw a lot of money into resolving things like endometriosis, other than taking out a healthy 22-year-old's uterus. I mean, it's like, fuck it, just take it. It's such a throwback to like the 1500s. It's terrible. But let me ask you this then, on that notion. If you guys could eliminate one political issue that constantly dominates the headlines, whether it's, I don't know, the endless gridlock over healthcare reform or immigration, this whole migrant issue, what would it be and why?
Which issue would we remove from the news cycle?
Yeah.
I think the notion that somehow the elections are not free and fair, despite evidence to the contrary, that they are there's very few cases of voter fraud, and they've tested it for decades and decades and decades. That to me is at the heart of changing anything else. And we have to, that messaging that the right has been successful. You have one political party who tries to make it really difficult for people to vote, and one political party that wants to have access for everybody to vote. And the political party that makes it harder, they never have the numbers. They have to win through the Electoral College, which is a relic that I think we all want to get rid of. But that is the one thing that I think is the most dangerous. We're always going to have these issues that we, crime, immigration, healthcare, et cetera. But when you start attacking our systems that elect officials, that is the reddest of red flags to me for a democracy.
I think mine would be the Electoral College. Like, if we could just get rid of the Electoral College and it was popular vote, number one, I'd feel more comfortable in the people appointed by the president. And like Kamala Harris has to get 2 or 3 points higher to win the electoral college than Donald Trump. That's just inherently unfair. He's never won the popular vote. I get why they had to have it back in the day. They don't need it now. Everybody can touch a button on their phone. It's done.
Yeah, but you know, the problem with that, and I've heard so many people engage in this question about the Electoral College doing away with it. If hypothetically they did away with the Electoral College, in all fairness, Oklahoma would have virtually no say in the election of the presidency. You would really only have to worry.
They shouldn't.
They shouldn't.
Do you see how the state votes?
We're ranked
Yeah.
49th in education. We have a population of just under 4 million. And we still have 2 senators to California who has a population of, 40, 50, 60 million? And they have the same amount of senators that we do. And I think that Oklahoma should not, with a population of just under 4 million, shouldn't be this big power player in national politics, especially when you see the people that we elect here. I mean, these people are stage 5 morons. I wouldn't let them babysit my dog for 5 minutes. I mean, these people are breathtakingly incompetent, religious whack jobs. They think the earth is 5,000 years old, don't believe in evolution, and on, just dinosaurs and human beings lived on the planet at the same time. These people shouldn't be in charge of jack shit. And furthermore, as a liberal in Oklahoma, my vote never counts, ever. The minute the polls close, the news stations immediately turn Oklahoma red. Immediately.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this then, because, you know, politicians, and regardless of the state, just on a nationwide basis here, increasingly rely on social media to communicate with voters. But it often feels like they're putting on a show, right? You know, whether it's these Republican idiots wearing an AR lapel pin or saying the stupidest things that you could possibly imagine. Do you guys think that platforms like X, formerly Twitter, or Instagram, or even TikTok now, are forcing politicians to become more performative rather than authentic? And any specific examples come to your mind, like the one I was just talking about?
I think the media landscape has completely changed because you have, everybody used to just watch the evening news, and then it turned into, after the OJ trial, then we all started watching 24-hour news cycles. Our kids' generation, all 3 of us on here right now, get anything that they get from their mobile device. So they've had to change somewhat. But I think the politicians changing to becoming more performative probably started a little bit with Kennedy during that first debate with Nixon, where he had on makeup and he was prepared and he was attractive, and Nixon's over there sweating like a whore in church. And then you had Bill Clinton on Arsenio Hall that played the saxophone. So I think that's been building, and it's probably been sped up and exacerbated by social media and the quick rapid fire changing of news. But I do think that some of it has become more performative because all the politicians in this state, they all roll out their Christmas cards, and exactly what you're talking about. It's the husband, the wife, and all 19 of their kids holding AR-15s with American flag shirts on. And these people are in charge of shit, which is why we're ranked last in everything. So yeah, I do think it's become more performative.
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, the performative nature, yes, but I think everything inherently with social media is more performative, from a mom showing her 2-year-old daughter to politicians. But I think getting your message across and motivating younger voters, I think that's a good thing. So if it means they're like AOC, everybody loves her because she's genuinely young and fun. I think TikTok loves Kamala Harris. And I think you have to be able to make fun of yourself a little bit on social media to be successful. And it seems like the politicians that have been able to do that are more successful on social media. So I'm kind of here for it a little bit.
Right. So, Ange, let me just say this. The reason I asked this question is the specific example that immediately came to mind when I wanted to draft this question to ask you was Donald Trump with his fist in the air after he got cut across his ear from a piece of shrapnel during literally an assassination attempt. That to me was purely theatrical. It was performative, and I think it's dangerous. All right. I thought the whole thing was one big giant performance after what could have really been something terrible. That's what made me think. Anything come to your mind?
Well, I think the Arlington National Cemetery was pretty gross too. But
That's
I'm
my
with you. The
second one.
fight. I mean, it was so shocking that his reaction was the first thing he thought of was a picture opportunity. Now he's got books and glasses and playing cards and maga balls and digital cards.
Sneakers.
Sneakers, all the grift. I mean, the grifting is off the chart. But I do think that he, in general, to me, is more performative than any other politician in the history of the world. I mean, everything is a grift, everything is a performance, because he really doesn't give a shit about anything he's talking about except himself. So I think everything he does is a performance. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty quick trigger from shrapnel in the ear, little minor cut, to fight. I was just like, oh my God, this guy is the luckiest motherfucker on planet Earth.
But I agree with you. I think those photo ops are really, really dangerous. And that was when Biden was still in the race. And it just seemed like, I remember seeing that. I was abroad in Europe, and everyone that I saw, the Europeans there, they asked me if it was staged because they think of America and all the photo ops. I'm like, no, somebody died. I think it's probably real. And, he's holding up his fist, and then you have now that's on t-shirts, his mugshot's on t-shirts. And there's just been this complete bastardization of the presidency, a candidate for the presidency, that honestly, when I think about I think all three of our kids are close to the same age. I think about their future. And the president was always somebody that you felt was smart, that you respected, you might disagree with. But he's just such a buffoon and a criminal and a con man. And worse than the character that Leonardo DiCaprio played, Catch Me If You Can. It's like even worse than that. He's like an evangelical preacher meets, this weird caricature. And it's really depressing when I think about this is the third time this man has run for president. And it's a symptom of all of the worst things about our culture, all in one person. Mm-hmm. There he is.
Right. It's beyond. Let me ask you this, though. With so much political polarization in the United States, do you guys believe that people on opposite sides, whether it's the gun control, abortion rights, climate change, etc., that they can actually find common ground again? Or is that just like a pipe dream at this point that some of us want to hold on to?
I think it's a pipe dream at this point. I think that if there were normal Republicans, like some of the people that have endorsed, that now he calls rhinos, some of the people that have endorsed Kamala, I think they could find common ground. But the Freedom Caucus, those people that are total fascists and authoritarians and religious lunatics, I don't see how you can bridge the gap there. And most recently, if you look at the French elections, they had a far right-wing party, and Macron rallied the troops. They stormed the streets and, protested, and they got out the vote, and they won. And so when they won, they went to shake the hand of the fascists that lost were holding their hand out to shake the hand of the French party that won. And they wouldn't shake their hand. These French politicians were like, I'm not shaking the hand of a fascist because we know how dangerous this is because we're European. The Nazis lived in France, the Holocaust, and they will not meet them and shake their hand. And I agree with that. I see how dangerous that is here. And if I ever saw Limp Dick around town, I would not shake his hand because I know that he is causing agony and anguish for so many Oklahoma women that are allegedly live in a free country. And that dipshit is not an OBGYN. He's a religious nut that has been emboldened by Donald Trump. This guy, Limp Dix, even sends out this tweet. Get this, Michael. After Trump was found guilty in New York, he sends out a tweet. Anybody from New York that wants to do business in Oklahoma, we won't charge you here. And I'm like, oh, so you're opening up for people to come here and commit a crime spree? It's just, you see Trump's impact on these really moronic, dangerous people in these red states, and then they get power and they consolidate power. And it's just, I don't know that we can bridge that gap anymore.
Yeah. So let me ask you, because on your I've Had It podcast, which I've been on, I think twice now. Once when we were at the DNC, that was amazing. And once before that, you guys talk about things that make you want to have it or hit it, right? Is there, and do I have it right? Is it I've had it or hit it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Is there a specific politician or public figure today, some fucker like Ron DeSanctimonious or Marjorie Toilet Green, right? Or Gavin Newsom, who you've actually just had it with? And what about them drives you crazy? Give me one each.
Okay. My top is Ted Cruz. I cannot stand this guy. I think he is spineless, no backbone. The fact that Trump called his wife ugly and accused his dad of assassinating JFK, and then he goes over there and kisses the ring. And then when all the power grid is out in Texas, he flees to Cancun, and he's one of the most duplicitous motherfuckers on the planet. He acts like he's this big Christian and he cares so much and he's so moral. And then all of that stuff happens. He has no backbone, no dignity or decency to stand up for his wife, who is the mother of his children. And just the fact that he's so obsequious to Trump, it grosses me out. And I will tell your listener this. I think he is the most unfuckable man in the United States of America, Ted Cruz.
See, Trump's my most unfuckable.
And you?
Okay, here's my thing. Obviously, Donald Trump is the winner chicken dinner by himself. The J.D. Vance obsession with women and women having kids, that's fucked up. I think that's completely had it with that. But my number one had it outside of those two is Jim Jordan. I find him so disgusting. You know, all of that stuff that went on with the sexual molestation of wrestling and the fact that he just spoon feeds that hate, that he's so weak. He sits around sucking Trump's dick. I mean, I cannot stand him. He just makes my blood boil.
Yeah. I listen, I asked that question because truth be told, I don't even know who I would say would be my number one. Yes, it's clearly Donald and Shady Vance. I get that. Jim Jordan, you know, I have no fucking regard for him. Ted Cruz, I hate to say it, I was actually involved in that whole story about his father being involved with the execution of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, in the National Enquirer. I was involved in that whole bullshit layout. There's so many others that I've had it with. And my hope is that when we talk about we've had it, is so many more. Josh Hawley, Matt Gaetz, right? Marjorie Toilet Green. You have Lauren Boebert. I mean, you know, there's so many of them. So many. Lindsey Graham. I mean, just so many, on and on and on. And my hope is that the listeners right here, and then even on your show, will turn around and vote these fuckers out of office once and for all, go straight down ballot Democrat. Because, you know, I said this in my book, Revenge, the very last paragraph, that Trumpism is fascism and we must eradicate it from our body politic. I wasn't just being hyperbolic there. I'm being dead ass serious. Unless you want to live in Gilead, in that dystopian world where guys like Ted Cruz or guys like, Trump or J.D. Vance, where they want to pretend that they have some sort of real religious inclination as to why they should tell a woman what she can and cannot do with her reproductive decision making. That's a real problem. Watch the show on Netflix. I think it's Netflix. Watch the show. This is what we are going to, where you have these, what do they call the folks that are running the place there? Not admirals, but
Commanders.
Commanders, right? That these commanders, if you have a working and functioning uterus, you are no longer in charge of it. We have taken control over your uterus. And so, of course, because the uterus is inside your body, we have taken control over you and your life, telling you where you're going to live, how you're going to dress, what you're going to eat, what the rules are for you to exist, right? That's what these people are talking about. And it is not about religion. It is not about their attachment to God and the Bible and so on. This is pure power. This is pure white Christian male nationalism, plain and simple. Women, in their minds, have gone too far. Driving, voting, running as CEOs, some of the major corporations in this world, running for, ready for this one? Men, don't lose your shit over this one. Running for the presidency of the United States of America. Shame on women. And what we need to do is bring you back to the, to the Stone Ages, right? Because women are not capable of defending for themselves. That's what their really belief. That's what Project 2025 is about. And when I see people like the Marjorie Taylor Greens or the Lauren Boeberts or, the Elise Stefanik's of the world, I've had it with all of them because I think they're even worse. Listen, the men can be stupid simply because they're just stupid. But when a woman sides with these men that are trying to take away their rights, do they not understand that they fall into that subset as well?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's worse. Like Nikki Haley, I find her more deplorable every time she opens her mouth because she knows he's unfit. She's seen him in action. It's like she knows America's a racist country. She's just pandering to that side of the party. And so I find it more offensive when it's a woman.
And I find the Nikki Haley's, the Lindsey Graham's, the most culpable because they know better. They know exactly what they're doing when they pander. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a complete nut. She is a completely indoctrinated in freebases, right-wing media all the time and has forever. And there are some politicians that fall into that category, but the ones that know better, the ones that served with Joe Biden when he was a senator and they were friends with him and made deals with him and friends with the Clintons, and then they allow all of this very dangerous authoritarian rhetoric, and they don't stand up to it to protect the country, to protect the Constitution, to protect free and fair elections. The Nikki Haley's, the Lindsey Graham's, what was the former Speaker of the House that got
Kevin McCarthy.
Kevin McCarthy, who ran down and kissed the ring of Trump. They're the most insidious, in my opinions, because they know better. Those type of Republicans are the most culpable.
Yeah, I agree. So look, we all know this too, that big money has always played a role in politics. But with super PACs and dark money flowing more freely than ever, how do you think that it's corrupting the political system? And do you think that voters are even aware of how much control the wealthy donors have? I mean, look at the people that you have throwing events for Trump. John Paulson, Howard Lutnick, Elon Musk, right? Just to name a few. Imagine how much money is being pumped in, or what's her name? Miriam Adelson. How much money is being pumped in to a guy who we all know, every single person listening to this show knows that Donald Trump is transactional and that he'll do anything for a buck. We all know that, including selling the Bible with his name on it. All right?
Right.
Do you think that people know just how much money is actually flowing through the system?
Two answers. I think there's a group of people that don't know at all. And then I think there's a people that don't know and don't care. Like there's a part of the electorate that could find that out and get enlightened and get educated about it and then have an aha moment. But there is this attraction to Donald Trump, and we live in a red state supermajority here.
Your sex life is important, but your schedule is just busy. And you don't have time to go to the doctor's office to get treated for ED. Through Hims, you can get a personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside your door. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing access to affordable sexual health treatments, all from the comfort of your own couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments, such as chewable hard mints, proven treatments like Viagra and Cialis, or their generics for up to, get a load of this, for up to 95% cheaper. The process is simple and 100% online. No uncomfortable doctor visits. So just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option for you. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you for free. And no insurance is needed. Pay one low price for your treatments, online visits, ongoing shipments, and provider messaging. I mean, Hims has hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers. So if ED is getting you down, it's time that you find the option that works for you. So go right now and start your free online visit today at hims.com/Cohen. That's HIMS.com/Cohen for your personalized ED treatment options. That's Hims, HIMS.com/Cohen. And the products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. And remember, restrictions apply, so see website for details and important safety information. Subscription required, and prices vary based on product and subscription plan.
And there's something that he speaks to, this inherent generations long racism, patriarchal society that they want to affirm. And even, like you said, women who have internalized misogyny go along with it. And it's terrifying how many people make carve outs and move the goalposts and the mental gymnastics and the moral gymnastics that they go through. And I think one of the most successful things the Republican Party has done, dangerous, but they've done this very successfully, is they have convinced a large portion of the electorate to vote against their own economic interests and to vote for the 0.00001%. And so I think they've been very successful at that messaging. I remember when George W. Bush was president and I was driving to Dallas from Oklahoma City. It's about a 3-hour drive, and I had to stop in this small town, and I was at this gas station. And this woman had probably 7 kids in the car. None of them had on any shoes, and it had all this Bush Cheney stickers on it. And I thought, God, they've messaged so well that that woman thinks that the millionaire Bush W., who gives a shit about her, and his policies are somehow going to help her. And now that's on crack cocaine with Trump. You see these people that go to his rallies and these people that buy his stupid digital cards. They're so clueless. They're waiting for the cards to come in the mail. They're like, where are our cards? They don't even understand that they're digital. And the fact that they have convinced all of these people who are barely above the poverty line or at the poverty line that this man is a man of the people. But it started before Trump. It started, I saw it with Bush. I mean, these people, the Bush's East Coast, Martha's Vineyard, all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, W brought out his Texas accent and all that stuff, but his dad was a, East Coast elite. The way the Republican Party has done that, I've seen here, and you see a lot of people, Oklahoma's not a super rich state, and you see a lot of people that support the Republican Party, and it doesn't behoove them at all.
And pumps?
Here's what I think. I think, number one, I think people still think that Donald Trump is so rich, he's funding his own campaign. I mean, I believe that. I see it online in little clips. So I think that no, they have no idea how the dark money's coming in. They have no idea that he is robbing the Republican Party blind. They have no idea that he is gobbling up every single dollar for himself, grifting and shit. And here's the deal. I think up until about the last 4 years, I was under the belief that the FEC, or I'm sorry, what's the one that does voting? Where they
It is. It's the Federal Election Commission, the
okay,
FEC.
the FEC was monitoring how much money is being given, that there's a limit here and a limit there.
Okay, but you're missing. Wait, but you're
you're
missing the point here. So what we're talking about is these super PACs, right? These are completely outside of the scope and control of the FEC. Now, here's the interesting thing too. There are so many rules for super PACs. First and foremost is if it's a 501c3, right? Then I mean, it's any amount. You really don't, or a 501c4, that you don't have to declare who gave what. It could come in from corporations and so on. But those super PACs cannot coordinate with the candidate or the candidate's campaign. So let me be the first one to turn around to tell you. Now I'm telling this to you from experience being there. That's bullshit. With a capital B and a capital S. It's fucking bullshit. I know for a fact because I was there in the room when the super PAC was coordinating with the Trump campaign going back to 2016. So if they were doing it while I was there, you think that they're changing their playbook? The answer is no. And so they're running specific ads, which the candidate, either could or could not run based upon the amount of money. But let's say you get somebody like an Elon Musk. Let's just take it. You're only allowed to give like $468,400 in total. Yeah, it's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. But when you're worth, $300 billion, it's really not. So he writes the check for that $500,000, give or take. Well, now he can't do anything anymore. Nope. Not true. He could park $100 million in a super PAC for ads for, it just cannot say from the campaign of Donald J. Trump. It'll say friends of Donald J. Trump, super PAC, or whatever the super PAC is called. It is a way of getting around the system. It's the dark money. But here's the thing. And this I talk about all the time, whether it's on this podcast, on my YouTube, I talk about on television, anywhere that I can. This is the best part. You take somebody like Elon Musk, who's putting in a ton of money, or like the John Paulsons or the Lutnicks, and they all think that they're going to get something out of Donald in the end. No. At the end, Donald will fuck them over as he has fucked over everyone. So they think that they're going to get something good or special. No. I'll tell you what I believe. If, God forbid, Trump becomes president of the United States, he's going to pull a Mohammed bin Salman on all of them. He's going to have them rounded up by SEAL Team 6 or by military. He's going to have them flown to Mar-a-Lago, to the ugly fucking tacky ballroom, like it is kind of in Riyadh at the St. Regis. He's going to put them on the floor, and he's going to do the same tactics MBS did to all of the members of the royal family and make them sign over vast amounts of their wealth to him, claiming all sorts of fraud. So you may say, yeah, but what fraud did Elon Musk do? I don't know. All Donald has to say is something like, he got $7,500 per electric Tesla vehicle sold by the United States government. It was an EV program. Fraud. You never should have gotten $7,500. And he sold hundreds of millions of cars. Multiplied by 7,500. That's the bulk of his wealth. Right then and there. So now I want it back. And that's what MBS did. All of these guys think that Donald is, which he is, he's stupid, but he's devious. And he's also motivated, very self-motivated by money. He will take all of their money. Zuckerberg's, he's going to take everybody's money across the board. And on top of that, The greatest are the Supreme Court idiots that are right now standing behind him with stupid things like this Presidential Immunity Act. Do they not realize that they just passed legislation, they passed law that provides a benefit to him to fuck them over? He easily now has the ability to get rid of any of them. He already said he wants to rewrite the Constitution to destroy our tripartite system of government. He wants to take the judiciary and the legislative branch and wipe them out and confer all power to himself. So who needs them at this point? And the answer is nobody.
Yeah. And when you talk about these oligarchs that are sucking up to him now, and I agree with you 100%. He's vindictive, he's jealous, envious, all of the things. I oftentimes think about Peter Thiel, who's a billionaire
Same
who
thing.
and he's gay. And I'm thinking, do you realize who you're getting in bed with? You will be the first that is ripped off and thrown under the bus. I mean, you may feel like you're one of them right now, but if you give these Christian nationalists power, you and your sexuality, it won't matter how many billions of dollars you have. They will chew you up and spit you out. That's the way it works. We know this because we know how our friends that are members of the LGBTQ plus community are treated here. Christian nationalists,
Yep.
there is a zero tolerance for that kind of stuff. And so I agree with you. It's a really fascinating approach because no one is safe. I don't even think his kids are safe under his rule.
Yeah, agreed. So let me ask you this one, Pumps. Obviously, flashy political headlines dominate, right? I mean, they just dominate, like Shady Vance fucking a couch. Other important issues get sidelined. What's a political topic, like whether it's mental health funding, housing affordability, grocery pricing, election security, that you think deserves more attention? I should really say way more attention.
I would say, obviously abortion is one of my number one issues, but I think it gets a lot of attention. But I think housing, and I think what Kamala Harris is doing, like subsidies and 3 million houses. I think housing people and giving them a vested interest in being able to afford housing, I think it increases your self-esteem, your self-worth. So I think actions that will help more Americans get affordable housing, I think that should get a whole lot more play. And I also think childcare is so expensive. As a divorce attorney, I see how many families cannot afford childcare. So childcare solutions and help, that should get a whole lot more attention.
I mean, did you see Trump's stupid statements on childcare? That rambling nonsense, as they said in the movie, Young Frankenstein, right? It was the nonsensical rantings of a lunatic mind. Remember that from Gene Wilder? You gave me an abnormal brain to put, that's really what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think the sane washing the media does when they say, well, what he meant was blah, blah, blah. It's like, let him speak for himself. He's 78 years old. If he says something crazy, he gets to eat it. Had it. Yeah.
What's your thought?
I think that the fact that we are the richest country in the world and such a powerful country, yet we don't pay people a livable wage is abhorrent, and it doesn't get enough coverage in the media. The federal minimum wage is, just a little over $7 an hour. And with inflation right now, it should be around $25 an hour. And I think it's a real arrogance for people to assume that if somebody goes to work at McDonald's and they scrub or they're a fry cook, but they put in the same amount of hours as a finance bro in Manhattan, that somehow one is harder or more difficult than the other. And I think the bare minimum thing that we need to do that tells the world what kind of people we are is pay people a decent, respectable wage. And the fact that the minimum wage has not been raised is such a moral shortcoming about who we are. Pumps and I just got back from Italy yesterday. And
which part of Italy?
Capri.
Love it. Love it.
And so on the tip advising, it says tipping is not really expected here because everybody makes a livable wage. A little euro or two is appreciated. And I think this does not get enough attention. And I think all of these pro-life people, where we started your podcast, if you're so pro-life, let's talk about the quality of life. But they're not. They're pro-birth. And then once that baby's born, there's nothing beyond that. You're not going to get a livable wage. Your mom's not going to get health care. Your mom's not going to get child care. It's just, and on the fuckery goes.
Yeah. So, Ange, let me ask you, because I'm going to ask both of you this question. If either of you ran for office tomorrow, what would be your top campaign priority? Would you focus on the hot button issues like the education reform, healthcare, or something else entirely? And I ask this question for selfish reason, because I am going to run. I'm going to run against Jerry Nadler for Congress come in November. Right after this election is over, I'm going straight to work. And I think he's been around way too long. I think he's completely ineffective. He's outdated. Everything he's doing. New York City, especially this Upper East Side, which used to be the diamond of Manhattan. It's, you can't rest on your laurels of 30 years ago. And so I want to do it. What would be your top campaign priority?
Right now in Oklahoma, for me, it would be women's bodily autonomy and access to reproductive health and keeping government out of that. Like a lower down on the list, like something I just think that really needs to be beaten in is we have to get some accountability with the Supreme Court. We have to have ethical codes and standards. So those would be my two, like one, and then probably lower down the list. But I think it's super important to bring to people's attention that every judge on every bench in every court in the United States has an accountability code of ethics that they are bound to, except the Supreme Court. And we've seen the fuckery up there. So women's reproductive autonomy first.
All right. I've got a great one. This would be the first thing that I would do. I would push to tax the prosperity gospel churches. Oh. They are abundant in Oklahoma. This is what prepared people and set the psychological soil in the South to make the jump to Trumpism. They have political agendas. They make billions of dollars. They've covered up sexual crimes against children. They got PPP loans, and they do not pay taxes. And if you saw these big operations they have here, mega churches on every corner, and the cars that these preachers drive, and the expense that they have, and then you can look to see what their net worth is. It is criminal. It is disgusting. It is keeping people angry. The hellfire damnation gospel, it primes them for Trumpism. It is incredibly dangerous, and I think they need to be taxed.
I remember when I think it was Joel Osteen, right? He had just built that new church, which is something like 4 times the size of Madison Square Garden. And there was massive hurricanes and so on. And he didn't want to let anybody, any of the homeless or any of the people, into the church because it was brand new and they hadn't really opened it yet. And he didn't want, it to be dirtied in any way, which I just thought was absolutely fantastic. I mean, doesn't it go against every tenet of the Bible? I mean, aren't you supposed to help those in need? Not unless that they're contributing to it. And look, he had that new church that he built along with their new G650s, along with their Falcon, 9X now for 75, 80 million. I mean, these guys are fucking killing it. So, I like that as an idea. But look, as the hour comes to an end, I want to ask each of you, because your podcast, I've had it, uses humor and satire to dissect everything from pop culture to politics. Do you think political satire like your show or programs like The Daily Show actually impacts political conversations and shifts public opinion? Or do you think it's more just about entertainment value?
Before we started the podcast, I would have thought it was the latter, that it was for entertainment value. But after having started it and speaking out for women's health and speaking out in support of marginalized communities like the LGBTQ plus community, we went on tour around the United States, and we have a ticket where you can buy a VIP meet and greet. And we have a line of 100 people, and these kids that are 22, 23 years old, queer, gay, lesbian, trans, drove hours to our shows from their rural towns to give us a hug and say, thank you so much. I sent your podcast where you speak about this to my mother, who won't speak to me because I'm gay. And I had her listen to everything you said about supporting the LGBTQ plus community. And now we're talking again. And that was an accidental consequence of what we did. And I don't know if the Southern accents and the way we look, we look like, Kellyanne Conway and Megyn Kelly or something. And then you figure out that we're liberal and fight for these causes. But I do think that they're impactful because we've seen it with our podcast. People want to feel equal. They're not asking for more, they're asking for the same. And when you see people of our socioeconomic stature and our skin color fight the good fight for minorities, for the LGBTQ plus community, for women's rights, it gives people a sigh of relief that there is goodness in the world, because by the looks of the three of us, we look like we would want to uphold the patriarchy, but we don't. We want to fight for the most marginalized people that live among us. And I do think that The Daily Show, and very little impact I've had at podcast, I do think it helps people to laugh and digest these really difficult problems.
I also think when you are listening to something and you're not expecting to hear like something about politics or reproductive rights or marginalized communities, and you hear it in humor, it kind of sits with you and you think about it later. It kind of triggers some thought that you wouldn't necessarily have, because people wouldn't necessarily tune into a die-hard political discussion.
Look, I agree with both of you. Yesterday when I was at the, or I should say the other day when I was at the U.S. Open, and I've always known that with this Mea Culpa podcast, we have hundreds of millions of downloads. And then it's also with YouTube where people are able to watch the show. I always knew that it was popular. I just didn't exactly know how popular until as you're walking, people are like, oh my God, I was just listening to your podcast. And it's literally as I'm walking in the park or here at the Open, people come running over. Hey, can I grab a photo? Like what happened to me at the DNC. The DNC, I kind of expected it more because you're talking about people who are there with the same ideology. Here I am at a sporting event, and I can't tell you the number of people that came over wanting just to take a selfie. And I suspect that probably happens a lot with you guys, but outside of the Oklahoma area. You're probably more, right, outside of the Oklahoma area. I think it's important, like you do, to break it down for people. And I don't know why. My hope is that between all of us, the I've Had It podcast, Mea Culpa, my Michael Cohen show on YouTube, my goal is, and I'm sure it's the same as yours, is to change the mind of just one person that's in that dumpster cult of Trump. Just one, because I believe that that they are indoctrinated off of bullshit and nonsense, and they just don't know how to get out. And that's my hope, not just for this as we go into the final stretch of this, of this election. Unbelievable that he's managed to escape so much of the liability that so many people want to see him held accountable for. One thing for certain is when he loses this November election, what's going to come down after that in terms of the additional 3 indictments, that superseding indictment as well, the sentencing by Merchan, the outcome of the E. Jean Carroll case, and so on. There's going to be so much coming at him all at once. It's actually going to be enjoyable to watch. And my hope is that it sends a message to all of these fucked up Republicans that are there kissing the ring of Trump, and stop this crap once and for all. So let me thank you, Jen. Let me thank you, Angie, for joining me. We're going to have to do a little tour someplace. Maybe we'll go to Pennsylvania together, or we'll go to Michigan together, right? Or Arizona. And maybe we'll do something where, we can do those meet and greets and we can speak to large groups of people and help this Harris Walz campaign get out there and make sure that people vote. Because the only thing that's going to take Kamala out of this race is apathy. So let me thank both of you for joining me. Looking forward to coming back onto I've Had It. Great podcast. Love you guys. And thank you for joining.
Thanks for having. It's great to see you, Michael.
Thanks,
The same.
Michael.